Okay, so this is the final level of order of operations. It actually is the last new lesson for this chapter. So if you've been keeping up with all this stuff, you're in good shape. Just understand the letter P stands for parentheses. It is the strongest operation, which is why it's at the top. But in all honesty, parentheses is really not an operation. It is what the parentheses do that creates the importance. So take a look at this information. What part of your eye is naturally being drawn to? And what you should notice is this part is where your attention is being drawn. And the reason your attention is being drawn there is because of these two things. So if you're scanning the problem, you probably notice the 2 plus 3 draws your attention most. Again, the parentheses kind of act like a focal point saying, look here first. Because of this common sense approach, it should be simple to make the adjustment to a new level of work. Just a key point, remember that just because there are parentheses, it does not mean that you're supposed to view that as a true P parentheses step. It just is there. So there's many different ways that they've used parentheses this chapter. This is not a parentheses. This is multiplication. This is also not a parentheses. This is also multiplication. And we learned that you're supposed to do 8 divided by 2 first and then bring down that and then go. This is also not parentheses because of the plus. This is addition. So don't let the parentheses throw you off. In each of the examples above, there's nothing to do inside. So here inside the parentheses, there's just a 4. Here there's just a 2. Here there's just a 3. Here there's just a 5. So it doesn't really constitute power or importance. The first 2 examples are just another way to write multiplication, which is what we have here. And the last one is just a basic addition part. The only time that parentheses exerts importance is if there's something to do on the inside. So when there's something to do, your job is to simplify the inside until there's just one value, then move on as we usually do. As long as you're starting to grasp everything else, this should not be major. Let's look at some problems really quickly before copying some notes. So a couple of problems to look at. In this problem, you're recognizing we have 2 times, we have an exponent, we have a subtraction, we have an addition, but the key thing is inside this parentheses there's actually something to do. And so what these parentheses are saying, that's where the P in PEMDAS comes from, is make sure that there's all your parentheses are simplified to one number. So we're going to rewrite our 2. We're going to turn this into 4 squared minus 5. From there, our parentheses are gone. So there's no more work to do inside of parentheses, though we are using parentheses for multiplication. That is all. And so what we do now is we work it out like we did before. We look for any exponents, because remember, we can't start anything with exponents still in it. That would be this part. 4 squared means 4 times 4, which means this turns into 2 times 16 minus 5. We then now have to do what we did before. The E is gone, so we're looking for multiplication and division, which we have right here. 2 times 16, if you don't know, do it off to the side. 6 times 2 is 12, carry the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 makes 3. So 32 minus 5, and the last thing we do is 32 minus 5, which is 27. Notice how the parentheses really didn't do much, but it gave us a starting point. So anytime you see the parentheses and there's something to do on the inside, that will constitute what you do first in every single problem. Now, a trick problem that you won't have to worry about on your quiz, but it is a problem that you eventually see, is something like 3 times 11 minus 3 squared plus 4. Inside this parentheses, we have to focus. But inside of there, we have 2 choices. Well, based off of the fact that we've done the order of operations, this is just a order of operations problem in which we look and say, what would we do first, the minus or the exponent? Obviously, the exponent goes first. 3 squared is 3 times 3, so it turns into 3 parentheses 11 minus 9 plus 4. Notice there's still a parentheses there, and there's still something to do on the inside, which is why we will still do that parentheses first, and then go from there to finish everything off. And that is all. All right. So looking at the bigger picture, the parentheses problems are just 2 or more problems worked out in one. So when we saw this thing here, 11 minus 3 squared, once you break that down to be 2, it's just the same as this problem here. The only difference is that this is its own problem to be worked out on its own, and then kind of moved on from there. Again, notice that part 2 looks just like work from last week. All we have to do is learn patience. Again, typically you start to make small silly mistakes when you want to rush. If the problem takes 5 or 6 lines, just take your time and do it the right way. You're intelligent enough to do it. You have to choose to succeed. So let's look at some of these for ourselves. This is the you do part of it. Give me 2 of them really quickly just to make sure you've got it. So take a moment, pause the video, try this out, and see what you do. Starting the answer now. If you did this correctly, the first thing you should have noticed was that there's 2 plus 1 inside of parentheses, which means that that is the P portion of the order of operations. So you rewrite the 5, you turn that into 3, copy everything else as it is. You then move on to E because there's no more work to do inside. That's just 5 times 3 squared. Exponents is here, so we recognize that 3 squared means 3 times 3, which turns into 9. From there, we do our multiplication division like we've been trained to do or like we've learned to do, and then we end up putting this all together to get 42. Again, if you have an issue with that, make sure you contact your teacher as soon as possible to try to handle that situation as fast as you can. Really quickly try this one here. Again, pause the video, see how you do, and then move on from there. If you did this right, inside the parentheses is 2 options, subtraction and exponent. Exponents are higher than subtraction, so inside of this problem here, the first thing we would do is our 2 squared. So we're going to get 3, 6 minus, well 2 times 2 is 4, so 6 minus 4 plus 1. Notice there's still a parentheses, there's still something to do on the inside, so that's what we do. 3 parentheses 2 plus 1. Now we work this out like we did last week. 3 times 2 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7, and that is all. So that's all that you have to worry about. So considering everything that we've been working on, that is your last lesson of the chapter. All we're going to do now is make sure that we go over everything that we need to know. So when you get to 75 plus 86, for those of you who are having issues, make sure you talk to somebody. 5 plus 6 is 11, carry the 1. 7 plus 1 is 8, plus 8 is 16. 161 is your answer. 67 minus 29. Can't do 7 minus 9, so we have to borrow, turn this into 17. 17 minus 9 is 8. 5 minus 2 is 3. 38 should be it. Just make sure you understand that, and if you don't, again, make sure you talk to somebody quickly as fast as you can, because these things are starting to become more expected. We've talked about these problems here where if the signs are the same, they work together and you add, so 5 and 3 make 8. And we've talked about how the bigger number gets the sign. In this case here, the signs are different, so that means we will subtract. Again, when they're different, we subtract. You might want to write that down for yourself. Bigger minus smaller, 6 minus 3 is 3. And because the 6 is bigger, the negatives win. Negative 3 is it. Once again, in this one, the signs are the same, and whenever the signs are the same, doesn't matter if they're both positive or both negative, you add. 6 and 2 make 8. The 6 is bigger, so the negatives win. And then once again, when the signs are different, we subtract. Bigger minus smaller, so 8 minus 4 is 4. The 8 is bigger, so the positives win. Again, that's going to be used more and more as we keep going. Just make sure you're trying to figure that out. So use today and this week to focus on mastering what you know. The trick to doing well on tests is to make sure that whatever you know, you get correct. And then do your best to earn some points on the other things you're not so quite sure of. Main thing is, again, if you know that you're good at something this week, make sure you are practicing that to make sure you get the points. But practice this week so you earn as many points as possible. It's not about getting 100% on the test. It's about getting every single point that you deserve. So ask questions if you're having issues, and outside of that, I'll talk to you later, and good luck.